one of the big things, significant milestones that happened when I joined university is I lost my room. I had a room at D27, which was sold by the housekeeper. In fact, were it not for student politics, I'd have gotten a first class. My transcripts were clean until I went into Musa, because now you have to devote your time between various things. You may recall that some of the people that I put up to be in the accommodation oversight committees happened to be my biggest competitors. All my competitors, from Happy Odongo, the guy in engineering, to Chetambe, all these guys, I asked them to come and help me serve in the accommodation docket, and they were part of the people who were helping me the recruitments of the volunteers. I think Dean Mureithi was very deliberate about creating two centers of power, and in a way to try and appease. And that coalition government is not any different from what we saw in the handshake. That when you're trying to introduce two centers of power, because politics is about interest. And so you had interests that were pulling at different directions. Thank you for a chance. My name is Eric Kinaga. I like to say Kinaga ubaga unatoa ubaga. Ama Kinaga naga unatoa naga. Yeah, so I did political science at a university for 4 years. It was here that I got an opportunity to continue to serve, because I'm also deeply passionate about service. So I served in various capacities at Moi, starting as a class rep, faculty rep. I served in professional associations. Most of the ones I think I remember quite well is SIPA. That is the International Association for Professional Associations in School, SIPA. I served in the advisory, and that was the last area of service that I served before delving into politics fully and serving in the 27th Students Governing Council as a director in charge of security and accommodation.
When we joined campus at a time when the student leaders, together with the university administration, wanted to talk to us, you spoke on behalf of the first years. Did somebody give you a hint, or it's something you just decided to grab?
Well, I think I spoke out of a need. I spoke out of a need, I must say. Not because I didn't even know that people can speak. It's because, if you recall, these orientations with the Vice Chancellor happen after people have joined in school and have been there for some time. I think a week or two. I think the orientations come after other orientations for faculties and stuff like that. So I think the orientation with the Vice Chancellor happens to be the last orientation that a first year student would get. And so one of the big things, significant milestones that happened when I joined university is I lost my room. I had a room at D27, which was sold by the housekeeper. the house managers who were in charge, the staff from the university who would be in charge of various hostels. So they sold my room to a fellow student who today I've never known who that person was. And so that's how I moved from getting a room at hostel D27 to F houses. And so I was moved to F houses. I believe it was F37, and we joined school at a time where it was quite muddy. And I think the first few days of my experience in school were quite terrible, having to shuttle between class and hostels and amidst the mud and very close to MABs there, and MABs had not been tarmacked. I went back to Moi, I believe, a year ago and found 2 years actually, 2 years ago, and found tarmac to MABs. It was unbelievable because during our time it wasn't tarmacked. And so while of course I could tell that there are other students living in F houses, which I didn't have a problem with, my problem was in how I missed my room, because I missed my room. So towards the end of the session with the Vice Chancellor, when we were asked for someone to speak, anyone with a question, normally the expectation from the MC was that someone would ask a question about the university, because the assumption is that you haven't been here for long, so you are trying to find your way around the rooms, if you can call it as that, the rooms around the place. But because I think I had already gotten a taste of that injustice, I decided to take the opportunity and speak about it. So I raised the issue about my hostel, about losing my hostel, going to F houses, and spoke about the condition of the F houses there, and I believe it was E houses and F houses, which was quite deplorable. I think students living in that side of school were living in a very pathetic situation. So I rose and spoke about it, and the Vice Chancellor asked to see me after the session, and I remember it was actually the editor-in-chief then.
Do you remember the name?
Is it?
Enoch Nyariki.
Enoch Nyariki, exactly. Enoch Nyariki was the editor-in-chief then. I believe there were also Mwamburi and a couple of other guys who were serving in the SGC then. And I remember we took a photo with Nyariki and the Vice Chancellor, because they were around there, and I still have that photo with me. And I think that photo, I didn't know it would have an impact in my school life, because it did. 2 years down the line, when I got the urge the desire to want to serve in the student governing council, and had to choose what position to go for. Initially, I was to go for chairman, but then I felt that my needs were more pronounced within the accommodation sector, and that's how I scaled down to the accommodation docket.
So what did the Vice Chancellor tell you?
One of the things he told me is that that was very brave of you to speak the way you spoke there. What you spoke about, definitely people are going to carry a burden, because there's someone who was in charge of that, who oversaw the selling of your room. But I will see to it that your issue is addressed. And for sure, there are many things I can fault Professor Richard Mibei, but one of the things that I remember about him is that he was a man of his word, because within a week or two, I don't know where my room came from, but I got a room, and I was actually moved.
When I had a sit down with Mwamburi,
yeah.
He spoke very highly of you.
Yeah.
He also said that you would at times consult with him. That is before you became a student leader.
Yeah.
Kindly enlighten us of the kind of discussions you had, and how did you get to him?
I think the first interaction I had with Mwamburi, I didn't even know he was a chairman, was at student center. And what I remember about Mwamburi was him standing or being surrounded by students outside the student center, where there was a rock, where guys would sit there and just speak. And what drew me was because guys were listening to him. I could tell that people are actually listening to one person there. So I went to listen, and I think guys were asking him questions about the leadership, including I think guys who had served before them. There were guys who I believe it was Eric Lungai who had been chased, and I think those some of the stories that guys were reminiscing. There was a story about Peter Mashoka that he was trying to respond. I think I would call it more of like a Kamukunji. And I think I was drawn by the way he answered the questions in grace. He was very graceful. I think Mwamburi was one of those student leaders who was quite graceful. Of course, we had other student leaders who carried an aura of presence with them. I think one of the ones that I remember quite significantly was the then sports director. And forgive me, I am so bad with names. I'm trying to remember his name, but I know he joined Unilever. I think he's still at Unilever. He used to play rugby. He was a sports director then. I think I'll get his name as we continue with this session. I think Mwamburi also then approached me when we had the session with the Vice Chancellor. For some reason, it became a big thing. In fact, it became something bigger than I had anticipated. For me, it was just an individual trying to speak about their own plight and the plight of people like him who he didn't know, but for sure suspected also lost rooms as a result of rooms being sold. But it became a big thing, and Mwamburi came and told me, I think he really affirmed me after that session and told me, I think that was really, really powerful. Please keep at it. Keep on that. You're on the right path. Keep at it, and don't ever lose an opportunity to speak up for those who can't speak up for themselves.
You decide to vie for the Director of Accommodation and Security. How do you make this decision?
How do I make that decision? I think somehow I knew I would want to serve as a student leader. I just didn't know where.
So, or could it be that your situation in first year prompted you to decide to come in as a director in that sector?
You know, that could be, and I think it was a prominent one. But there are a number of things that happened between first year and second year that prompted. I think that it was a journey that was building up. I was involved in the returning of second years students who were in the intake 2012 intake from Annex back to main campus together with Academa and Jeff Kenyatta. I also led the campaign against students refusing to come out of their rooms, because if you recall, in 2011 up to around 2012, when at the end of a semester the university would require that you vacate. But you see, people have been asked to vacate because the university did not have enough accommodation. So it is you have a room, you vacate, you don't know where else you're going to go. And so we had this campaign that we ran in 2012 against the administration, saying that hatutoki room. I think there's a campaign ya kusema hatutoki room that happened in 2012, way before the elections. What else do I remember? I was involved in a number of demonstrations where students we even had to walk up to Keses. So I think all those were pockets of opportunities for me to realize that there were opportunities to serve, because those are opportunities to be able to speak about issues that not many people are willing to speak about, or the university is not willing to have conversations about. And I think it edged me closer to the possibility that I could actually formally serve in a capacity of service as a student leader. And so when we started off with my friends, Jeff Kenyatta and others, we knew, like for me, I knew most probably I would go for the Secretary General or the Chairman. But the more I thought about it, because it wasn't just about serving in Muso, it was making an impact. It was about what will it look like after I have served. What can I say? What do I walk away with from this university or from this student governing council? And the more I thought about it, the more I felt like the presidency or the Muso chairmanship was too broad. The scope was too high, and with a lot of latitude to cause meaningful change, but the possibility of not being able to have something that you can actually say you have done. And of course, I then remembered my situation. In 2012, I remember we were pushing for the university to automate the booking system, so that, because guys who were serving, some of them in the administration block, others were student leaders, were selling rooms before our time. As in, people would actually pay to get their rooms in school. Others would pay to get rooms in Geria, others and wherever, all manner of places. And so the question is, what if you cannot pay? And I remember at some point in 2012, I was doing an antigen business. I was selling antigen in school. And during that time, I was trying to raise my school fees, which I did. And part of that money helped me to also do my campaigns. And I think the need to be able to have a place where you can actually go and know that you have a room, and not have to come and put up in someone's room before you have opened school, trying to buy your way around getting a room. So I lost a lot of my friends around me lost their rooms, including my girlfriend, is now my wife, and many other people who lost their rooms. I would be one of those people who has to come to school very early on, so that I can haggle around getting a room, getting a mattress, because people would miss. And at this point, I must pause and give a shout out to my roommate. I had a roommate for the full 4 years in school. His name is Brian Degwa, who was from Kagumo. I was his roommate, and he always enjoyed school because he never had to come to school early. Because I would come to school early and get him a room, get him a mattress. Yeye anakuja tu kulala after everything is sorted. He just sends me the money. But it was very chaotic. It was very kienyeji. As in, how people have to, like, it's like hawking rooms, literally. So I was also involved in that process of just trying to pile pressure on the university to ensure that our booking system is automated. And I remember when now I was coming to make the decision about what position do I go for, there are positions I knew I couldn't go for. Catering. There was health. There was, I think, sports, academics. So it was either chair, secgen, or director of accommodation. And I think the choice to go for accommodation was guided by my experiences, my lived experiences, and the lived experiences of the people around me were more around accommodation. And I felt that is the docket that would give me a platform to cause meaningful change. So that's how I chose to go into the docket. And I'm glad to say that I'm very, very honored that I was able to leave a mark, I think, in that space. I think maybe the jury is out there. The jury is still out there. But I think in terms of fixing the crisis and ensuring that people did not have to go home. In fact, it happened that we were the biggest beneficiaries. We were supposed to go home for an elongated period of time in 2014. But because we decked these hostels for the big guys, the hostels for 4 years, we decked them so that if a room had one person or two people, it now had an extra two people.
How was it working with the administration? Because most student leaders would say that when you got elected, the administration knew that you had only 1 year to make any change that you'd want. But in most cases, they would stall, knowing that you can't do much within that 1 year. How did you handle that?
It was quite difficult. I think there are multiple lessons learned in there. One of them is about pragmatism, knowing that as a leader there are things that you can do and there are things you can't do. And I think I must say it was quite difficult because you're a student leader, so it means that this is an added advantage. This is an added responsibility on you. You are a student, but you're also a student leader. And so you have to shuttle between your studies and this and the vagaries of what comes with leadership and everything. I think it was quite chaotic. 1 year is a short time, and maybe that explains why most student leaders don't graduate. It's because of that is a factor where you had to move away from your studies. Like I remember in my third year and fourth year, I was literally missing classes. I had to depend on people like Getungo, who had very good handwriting, and others in my class who had very good handwriting, and I would photocopy their notes and go and read. That's how I survived through Moi in my third year and fourth year. In fact, were it not for student politics, I'd have gotten a first class. My transcripts were clean until I went into Musa, because now you have to devote your time between various things. Of course, there was a lot of politics with the administration. I think there were people within the administration, within the Dean of Students, the Student Affairs Department, the DVC, as in the main administration block, who had direct interest on student affairs. And some of those interests were not properly situated. Because if we are all interested in student affairs, I am a student, you are an admin, and we are interested in student affairs with no ulterior motives, why can't we have an understanding? And I think that really caused the friction. It was quite difficult, but I recall during our time, Nathan Ogechi being the DVC Student Affairs, I found him quite reasonable to speak, and I think that it's also where I got one of the other lessons that has continued to help me. That even because I am an activist, I work in the civil society space, that there are things, I know that there are things that require us going to the streets, because there is no way we can negotiate, and there is no way the government is going to come down to the negotiation table. The only language they will understand is a language of violence or protest or picketing. But the other things I've learned, they just need a meeting. And I think I wasn't short of identifying what those are. And I think one of those was the decking of the hostels. I remember that time with the then head of accommodation, the director of accommodation on the part of the university, and of course Nathan Ogechi. When I went and presented to them the math I had done, because I went and asked, I didn't have official data, because I needed to know how many beds do we have in the university. That is data you cannot demonstrate to get. It's a data you need to go to the office and find out. Like, we need to find out how many deckers do we have, and what space do we have? Like, how many rooms do we have? So when we got that math, it was easy for me to do the calculation, to know how much extra beds do we need, and we don't need to make them. They are already there. We just need to move them from where they are in the store and put them to the hostels. Just that math. And I remember when I went to show that to Nathan Ogechi and how do I forget the name of the guy who was in charge of accommodation? My God, my memory is failing me. But yes, when I went to meet him and shared with them, they had a listening ear. We fought on many other things. They were very supportive. I remember the administration was quite supportive of security. Like, they would provide a truck, a pickup at night, which I used a few times. My predecessors used, my successors used at night, just doing rounds around the university during the time we had Peter Mashoka. The other time that I remember that we negotiated our way in the university was with the help delays. We had help delays in 2011 and 2012. We even went to Charles Ringera's office at Help Towers, and then negotiated with the DVC to pile pressure, and the money was released. And you've seen that on the news recently, that guys are still struggling with help. And I think there are alternatives. There are various options that student leaders and students can use. And I think being pragmatic enough to know when must you go to the street, because there is no other language the university will understand. And I think we were not short of those as an option. But also to realize what are those low-hanging fruits where they just need a conversation, and you have an aligned thinking, and the rest can be done easily. So I think it was turbulent, but it was also enriching, especially those times when I felt like the administration actually had us. Actually, I just remembered another time when we lost a student from Coast, and the Coastal Association, led by Oscar Maina, could not get a bus. And I was involved, and I was in second year, and we just went and we just need a bus. This guy has lost, we've lost someone here, we need a bus. And the university gave him a bus. I remember that time it must have been Dean Mureithi. And we had even done a demonstration. But you see, that is one of the instances where, had we not demonstrated, we would not have gotten a bus. So I think there are instances where the only language that would work for the university was protest. And sometimes the only language that would needed to be heard is the language of negotiation, and we were not short of that. I just hope that those who are there can be able to discern, because I think discernment is what is most important. Like the way I relate with you, I would know how to approach you. If I need to go to the streets for you to hear me, or I need to just call you, make a phone call and you hear me. Yeah.
There were allegations that most student leaders during your time were just concerned with securing kiosks and shops within the university. Is it true, since you are one of the people who are inside?
That's an interesting question, because I personally did not have one. I must start by saying that. But also, one of the things that we need to fix about that part of student governance is how the tendering is done, because the tendering process was actually done by student leaders. So, of course, I learned after I had gone into office that there are student leaders who are financed by the barons, the university. When I say the barons, I mean the shop owners, because the structure belongs to the university, the space belongs to the university, but the business belongs to an individual who is not a student, because a student cannot own a shop because they can't run it. when you think about it, even student leaders who had shops, they were just the face of it. The shops had owners, and so in our time that happened. It was an interesting situation where people took shops. But when I think about it, is the whole issue about campaign financing. I mean, when I was running in my time, I ran against someone who spent probably more than 30 times the money I spent. I mean, we had 12 people running for the accommodation and security docket. My competitor paid 10 of them to step down. And rumor has it that they were paid between 50,000 and 100,000. So think about someone like that who now gets into student governance. And the first thing they want to do is to recover what they spent. And it's the same thing that we are seeing in our politics up here. Part of the reason why this country is grappling with Campaign Financing Act, the regulations start of the campaign financing is a similar situation that mirrors what is happening in our university. So that happened. It was there, and I think it greatly compromised leaders. Even if sometimes I cannot fault them, because for many of them someone was just trying to eke a living out of it. But it deeply compromises your leadership. It deeply compromises what you stand for and how people view you. Because, I mean, if people know that I am the one who owns a Chips Cafe, surely it goes without saying that the issues about electricity and people being told not to cook in the hostels, you can directly relate that situation to someone who runs a Chips Cafe, properly speaking. And it's one of the things that management here, I believe, was a Department of Student Affairs that used to divide student leaders. Because not everyone was getting, you may not know, but not everyone was getting a Chips Cafe. There are those who refused like me, and there are those who were too small to get or too nondescript to get a chips cafe. So what happens to those student leaders who were elected to work together, but you're already having those power plays within that team, and I think that greatly affected student leaders and their ability to speak up for issues. Because if you have a chips cafe, which I learned later that those chips cafes were also owned by very, very highly placed university staff. What do you expect that student leader who has gotten into a partnership with that staff, if it's someone in the dean's office, what do you expect that person will say about students? It becomes quite difficult, and I think it's something that I hope we can be able to rectify, because I'm not surprised that it's a reason. It's also affected other student leadership or student unions across the country. Look at Sonu. I mean, it's not the Sonu that was there when the fight for multipartyism was at its peak.
By the time your SGC was being dissolved at the last Kamkunji, you got an opportunity to speak. But in the crowd, there were some people who were very happy with the work that you had done. In fact, amongst all the student leaders in the SGC that you served, you are the only one who people liked much. I even remember somebody saying within the crowd in some video that you Rudi Kazi. How do you feel about that, and how did you manage to remain that focused to the extent that by the time you're leaving, your term limit has ended, but still the students want you back?
What I must say, in politics, crowds are manufactured. I must say that was not manufactured. I think it is good to start from there. Anyone thinking that I had facilitated a crowd to ask me to go back to work, that did not happen. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in paying for that kind of support. But I think there are a number of things that I was very, very, very consistent about, and very deliberate. I must say, I think the deliberateness is the right word. That I was very deliberate about, and I think one of the things I was quite deliberate about is to serve everyone. If you remember, during our elections, just like other elections before us and after us, were deeply divisive. And I belonged to a team that was neither Jubilee or CORD. That we had a lineup of people who were neither Jubilee leaning and CORD leaning. And never mind, I had been approached by State House operatives to support me, to fund me to run on that ticket. That's a story I'll tell on another day, but I wasn't part of the leaning team. And we had these teams, and I think our chair that time was Jeff Kenyatta. And you know how the story goes. Jeff Kenyatta goes on the last Kamukunji and steps down. and Jeff Kenyatta single-handedly caused the division that we saw in that politics, because it now became that center non-aligned team, or that whole lineup now sort of became disentangled. As in, it was either now CORD or Jubilee, and I think it happened after that incident with Jeff Kenyatta.
You are very close to Jeff Kenyatta. Why did he decide to step down?
Oh, I even today, it's something that it's one of those things I've decided to live with. Jeff, if Jeff listens to this, Jeff owes me and my generation an apology. Yes. But one of the things, you're asking me a question about what I did. I really try to serve everyone. And why I give that so short detour is to say that our politics was deeply divided. So there are guys who are bush guys who did not like me and did not vote for me and hated me passionately. But turns out that some of the people I helped with their accommodation issues happened to be those people. And not because that I went looking for them, but because somehow they were outspoken, and they were outspoken about their problems. And anytime I saw a student come to me for help, in that student I saw myself as a first year with my own accommodation crisis challenge that I had. And so I tried to serve all regardless of who someone was coming from. I think I can also quite unequivocally say that I don't play tribal politics, and I didn't play tribal politics at the university. And what that did for me is that it gave me a platform to be able to interact with people outside the divide. In fact, there are even people during our time who had tried to put me in a tribal, they're trying to place what name is Kinaga. Is it Kikuyu? Because I never used to speak Kikuyu in school, and yet I'm a Kikuyu. People confuse me for a Taita, others would confuse me for a Luya, and I never took the opportunity to clarify. So I think that really helped me. Now when I look back, I think students saw that, because for me I was deliberate that I will serve. Even the people who I struggled to serve, because there are people who are extremely harsh on me during my campaigns. But when I won, I think I extended an olive branch to them. You may recall that some of the people that I put up to be in the accommodation oversight committees happened to be my biggest competitors. All my competitors, from Happy Odongo, the guy in engineering, to Chetambe, all these guys, I asked them to come and help me serve in the accommodation docket, and they were part of the people who were helping me the recruitments of the volunteers within the larger accommodation docket. So I think it helped to accentuate, or rather not accentuate, I think it helped to reduce the effect of the animosity that would have followed my time, because I never set out to get celebrated on my exit. I never looked forward to that day. I think it came, but it's a constant reminder that if you do what you set out to do, people will see the efforts, and they will appreciate the efforts. But even if they don't appreciate the efforts, even if students had not asked me to rudi kazi, I think I was at peace with my God that I had done my bidding, I had done my time, and I think I had done what I had set out to do. Of course, there are things I wasn't able to achieve in my time, just like there are many things we can't achieve in our lifetime. There are things we aspire to, things that we will be able to get, others we won't be able to achieve in our lifetime. But the things I was able to realize, I'm truly, truly grateful to God. It reminds me, one of my favorite verses that say, I think it must be in Psalms 127, it says, unless the Lord builds a house, the builders labor in vain. For me, I think it was just the hand of God that I was able to serve in the way that I served, and leave a mark in my time. I feel very honored about it.
How was it working under a grand coalition government that to us looked very chaotic?
How was it? Chaotic. It was exactly that. I think it was very chaotic, because I think Dean Mureithi was very deliberate about creating two centers of power, and in a way to try and appease. And that coalition government is not any different from what we saw in the handshake. That when you're trying to introduce two centers of power, because politics is about interest. And so you had interests that were pulling at different directions. It's like, for instance, one of the things I felt bad about it, but then remembered that with politics you have to, as Kibicho recently reminded us, that you have to learn to dance with the devil. I couldn't believe that the person I had defeated decisively, Mandela, was now an SGC member. It defeats logic. But then that is politics. Politics is not logical. So I think it was a difficult time. I would not be surprised that cumulatively, I always feel like our SGC did not meet its objectives. I feel like we were not able to achieve all our goals as an SGC. We may have achieved our goals as separate dockets, but as an SGC, that cohesiveness, because like one of the things I remember about Mwamburi's SGC is the cohesiveness. The thing I remember about Dogana's not Dogana, Dogana, because Dogana was a chair when Dikembe was SGC together with Gertrude Kurgat. The thing I remember about them is that they would speak in one voice. I don't recall our SGC speaking in one voice. What I remember about our SGC is feeling bad about us speaking at cross purposes. People were pursuing all manner of interests. Not bad, but not aligned. And when you have, look at the Jubilee government. I have nothing against the handshake, but the government literally for 5 years did not serve citizens, because you are speaking from all. You're trying to appease people who are not appeased. So you're not cohesive. So you cannot concentrate on the mandate that you have been given. And that's why if you look at, because I'm paid, one of the things I do for a living is I analyze manifestos. I can tell you the Jubilee manifesto for 2017 did not deliver. The Big Four agenda did not happen. Everything that the Jubilee delivered, especially around the 10,000, 12,000 kilometers, was done in their first term. And not because the handshake is bad, but I think it is the way it is envisioned. The people at the center, the two principals, may not have a problem, but what do their supporters think out here? And as long as you have supporters who don't, on either divide, who don't think it is good for them or feel aggrieved about it, then it means that you cannot pull together. And politics is the art of pulling together. If you cannot pull together, then the things you commit to do as a government, as an SGC, cannot happen. And if they happen, they're going to happen with great difficulty.